Hello class. Okay, this is a short video to help you with this assignment I've given you about manipulating the raw data, the raw trade data, to get a sense of what the trade deficit looks like in some real sense. So remember, when you just get the raw data from 1960, 1970, 1980, a dollar in 1960 is not the same as a dollar in 2019, and so we need some way to make the dollars comparable across the years. One way to do it is adjust them for inflation, which you know how to do. Another way to do it is to consider the trade imbalance as a percent of GDP, which would net out inflation and give you a number relative to the growth in the economy. But the one I was going to do in this lesson is I want to look at the trade imbalance relative to the amount of exports that we have. Okay, so let's get started. Let me move my image off of here, and all we're going to do is we're going to go out on the internet and we're just going to do a Google search for balance on goods and services. This is one of the trade accounts in the United States. You could do it on the current account if you wanted to. Balance on goods and services, and I just know that the BEA.gov, because I've done this before, BEA.gov is where this data is collected in a very useful way. So we're going to click here. So now we're in BEA.gov, and I want the trade accounts, U.S. trade in goods and services 1960 to present. That should be good. So I picked that one because these others, monthly, they would be a lot harder to work with. This is annual data. So now it's downloaded and I can show it to you. Let's enable edits. So these are all the tables, and they're down here in these tabs. You probably can't see this. Hold on a second. See if I can get it where you can see it. You can probably see that. They're down here in these tabs. So what we want, let's see what this is. This is annual data, balance, exports, imports, international trade in goods and services. This is what we want. So I'm going to use this one right here. Now, as I recall, yeah, that gives it monthly, so I'm going to get rid of all this. I don't need that. Come on. There's a lot of that stuff. Don't need any of that stuff. Good. Now I just have the annual data. Now notice, if you just plotted this balance, let's go ahead and do that. So you go to Insert, come over here to your options for plotting, and students oftentimes will use this thing. It's called a line graph. Don't do that. The problem with a line graph is it only keeps track of the thing that's on the y-axis. The x-axis are just the observations one after another. What you really need is this thing down here, which is called an XY plot or XY scatter. So you select that. I usually pick this one, but it doesn't really matter. Alright, now Bill Gates has worked ahead of us, and he just imagined, incorrectly of course, that we wanted all this stuff. This is really just garbage. So I'm going to get rid of these things. Let's see, select data. Here's all the things that Bill put in there. Remove that, remove them all. Yeah, because he doesn't know what he's doing. Now we're going to add, we're just going to do the balance. So on the x-axis, I want the years, and that's this stuff over here. Years. Down to 2018. And on the y-axis, I want the balance on goods and services, which is this column right here. And now let's see what that thing looks like. Come on, load. There it is. So let me make this big so you can see it. So this is the kind of graph that you often see, especially when somebody is making some shrill speech about how terrible trade is. That just kind of comes along and then the bottom just falls out. But you got to remember, a dollar in 2019 or 2010 and so forth is worth way less than a dollar in 1960. So these dollars over here need to be exaggerated, and these dollars over here need to be diminished. There are several ways to do it. One is to adjust the data, adjust these numbers over here for inflation. But another way, which kind of makes more sense to me, is just get these numbers as a percent of GDP, and that's the exercise I ask you to do. But what I thought I would do in this video is I'm going to get these numbers as a percent of exports. So let's get this thing out of here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new column over here, which we can call balance as a percent of exports. Balance as a percent of exports. So the first one would be the balance, which is this number right here, divided by total exports, which is this number right here, and then times 100 to get it in percent. So what this says is that this surplus, this in 1960 of let's see, it's in millions, so that's $3,508,000,000. That surplus was about 13% of total exports. So now let's just drag it down and see what the others look like. So we had a deficit in 2018, and that deficit was about 25% of total exports. So let's go ahead and plot this thing and see what it looks like. So you just take insert XY. We're going to do this thing. And Bill Gates might have guessed right this time, but I can't really tell. So I'm going to undo what he did and do it myself so I can be sure. So let's see. I want to select data. And then I'm going to add one that I'm just going to call percent of exports. And then the Y values are the years. That's this stuff over here. And the X values are these numbers I calculated, which are this stuff right here. And now let's see how that looks. Now, where's my graph? There we are. So it has the same basic shape, but it's not nearly as exaggerated. So these numbers over here are much higher, and these numbers over here relative to those are not quite as dramatic, although it's still pretty impressive about this deficit. Okay, so this is a good exercise for you to try to understand how to manipulate the data, and you should try this on your own to make sure you can do it, because I'm probably going to ask you to do one of these on the first test. All right, good luck.